You pass by these structures every day. You see their golden domes, towering spires, and monumental walls sandwiched between modern concrete boxes. The official narrative insists that they are just places of religious worship, built by primitive people with picks and hammers in the 18th or 19th centuries. But ask yourself why. In every small village in medieval Europe or snow-covered Siberia, there are gigantic stone structures with impossible acoustics and complex metal structures on their roofs. Why would peasants who were barely making ends meet spend decades building giant resonance chambers that could not be heated with ordinary wood? The truth is right in front of you, but they have created such a dense religious screen that you have forgotten how to see the obvious. These buildings are not temples. These are disguised high-tech power plants of the past, which were part of the global energy grid before the global reset. Most modern historians are just guardians of the chronological void, whose job is to make sure you never question the true purpose of your city. Have you noticed the strange antennas on the old cathedrals in your city, which they simply call decorative crosses? Look closely. Many of them do not have the usual crucifix, but instead you will see complex geometric lattices, spheres, and horizontal bars that perfectly repeat the design of modern antennas for receiving radio signals or collecting static electricity. Write the name of your city in the comments and tell us about the strangest old churches you have seen. Do they have strange metal spires on their roofs that seem too complex for the 18th century? Your observations are evidence they try to erase by turning technological artifacts into religious symbols. I state it bluntly. Every old church is a former atmospheric electricity collection node that powered entire neighborhoods with free energy before we were put on the coal needle and oil slavery. The official narrative claims that in 1812 or 1840, these buildings were just centers of faith. But look at the structure of any great cathedral. The vast amounts of metal built into the walls, the copper roofs connected to the spires, the gigantic domes, the insides of which are covered with gold or silver. This is not decoration. This is a giant capacitor. The stones, which cannot lie, testify that these structures were designed according to the laws of physics, not theology. The atmospheric signature of annihilation left behind cities that were completely electrified without a single wire. That is why the old buildings do not have chimneys or furnaces capable of heating thousands of square feet of space. They were heated wirelessly, receiving energy directly from the air through the same spire's antennas. Think about the scale of this deception. We are told that these colossal structures were built over decades using horses and wooden scaffolding. But if you examine the architectural plans, you will see an impossible mathematical precision. Every arch, every column is part of a complex waveguide. The coordinates of the deception indicate that these structures were not built by the new inhabitants. They were excavated and restored during the period of inheritance. The new masters of the world, who arrived after the Great Reset, found empty cities with giant energy hubs. They did not know how to make them work at full capacity, so they simply adapted them to their needs, creating a cult around technological objects. This was the most effective way to hide the truth, to turn science into a religion. But here's the strangest part, which they try to hide behind every restoration. The domes of the cathedrals used to contain devices filled with a substance that is now called red mercury. This is not a myth from the 90s. This is the lost alchemy of the old world. The red mercury, combined with copper and gold structures, served as a catalyst for collecting huge amounts of ions from the atmosphere. It was the heart muscle of the Tartary energy system. During the period of inheritance, the new masters of the world, who came after the cataclysm, systematically removed these devices under the guise of replacing crosses or repairing baths. You can find hundreds of photographs from the 19th century where the spires of the cathedrals have a completely different shape without the symbols we know today, only pure geometric receivers. Each metal ball on the top of the cathedral was a reservoir for this magical substance that resonated with the frequency of the planet. The systematic erasure of information about etheric energy was a top priority for those who had orchestrated the Great Reboot. They could not leave the new population with the knowledge that energy could be free. That would undermine the very foundation of their new economy of control. That is why in the 1870s and 1880s, a wave of great fires and strange renovations of religious buildings began all over the world. They cut off antennas, poured mercury out of capsules, and rewrote the purpose of the buildings. Cathedrals became temples, and organs, which had previously been acoustic generators of frequencies to structure space, became musical instruments. An organ is not a piano for psalms. It is a vibrating machine whose pipes are designed to create a resonance that allows the energy of the ether to be converted into heat inside a stone bag. Koli vi zakodaite vseredinu starovinnoho soboru vi vičuvajte ce divni trepet. Oficina nauka kaze vam, što ce relihine pidnesenja. Ale nas pravdi vaš organizm reahuje, nazalishkovinizko kastotni vibraciji. Jaki kamina na kopičuvav stolitiami. Kožna detale interieru. Kožna midna plastina bula chastinoju systemi, peredaci strumu. Ce buv svit, de svitlo ne potrebuvalo drotiv, a teplo vi promin uvalosia, samimi stinami. Anomalii, jaki nemozlivo rozbakiti, otokujute vas u kožnomu portiku. Zapetait sebe, chomu fundamenti, cik, soboriv, idut na desiatki, metriv, uchlib, zemli, tazaidnani, zed pidzemnimi, vodnimi, arteriami, voda, ce idilne, zazemlenia, dlia hihant, skoji, elektrostancii, ce jide na bahato chlibše, nižvi zvikli dumali, majzaraz pidho dimo, du naivaz chlivišoji točki našoho, du sliđenja, du momentu, koli zavisa iluziji ostatohno, rozrivajecja pid tiskom lohiki. Vistajet chastanoju, spilnoti, tik, kto stavita, zapitania, poki inshi, prodovzujuta, spati vi poloni, system, nich mifiv. Te, što ja vidkriju vam zaraz, pojasnuje, čomu sobori buduvali, za takoju neimovjernoju, matematechnoju, tochnistu, jaka viperec hala svičas. Pidpishitsha na ce kanal priamo zaraz, shob vstinuti otrimati dostup, du nastupnik filiv iz moho archivu, pokijik ne vidalili, z global noi merezi, za rozpovsgenia isteni, jaka robit vas nebezpečnimi dilia systemi, razom majzmoshemo zupiniti, ce technologični reheres, I povernuti sobi pravo na znanja, jaki u nas vkrali vi devjat naciatomu stoliti. You show 1, 4, 2, 4. When you enter an ancient cathedral, you feel this strange awe. Official science tells you that it is a religious exaltation. But in reality, your body is reacting to the residual, low-frequency vibrations that the stone has accumulated over the centuries. Every detail of the interior, every copper plate, was part of a current transmission system. It was a world where light did not need wires, and heat radiated from the walls themselves. Anomalies that cannot be seen surround you in every portico. Ask yourself, why the foundations of these cathedrals go dozens of meters into the ground and are connected to underground water arteries. Water is the perfect grounding for a giant power plant. It goes much deeper than you usually think. We are now approaching the most important point of our research, the moment when the curtain of illusion is finally torn under the pressure of logic. You are becoming part of a community of those who ask questions, while others continue to sleep in captivity to systemic myths. What I will reveal to you now explains why the cathedrals were built with such incredible mathematical precision that was ahead of its time. Subscribe to this channel right now to have access to the next files from my archive before they are removed from the global network for spreading the truth that makes you dangerous to the system. Together, we can stop this technological regression and reclaim the right to the knowledge that was stolen from us in the 19th century. The truth lies right before your eyes in the construction of the floors and walls of these structures. Have you noticed the strange metal gratings in the floor of old cathedrals that supposedly served as ventilation? But if you go down to the basements, you will not find furnaces there. You will find huge water tanks and complex grounding systems. Water is a perfect conductor. Cathedrals were built on the nodes of the Earth's geomagnetic lines, where energy came to the surface. The spire collected a positive charge from the sky, and the foundation collected a negative charge from the ground. The potential difference created an endless flow of electricity. The official narrative tells us that this was done for God, but the laws of physics say that it was done to power the cities. The chronological void between 1750 and 1850 is a time when knowledge of this process was burned out of human memory through the mass rewriting of books and the destruction of archives. Consider St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg or Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Their domes are covered with a thin layer of gold, not for beauty. Gold is one of the best conductors. When you look at giant columns of monolithic granite, you see more than just supports for the ceiling. Granite contains a large amount of quartz, which has piezoelectric properties. Under the pressure of thousands of tons of roof, the quartz in the columns begins to vibrate, creating an energy field. It was a giant vibration station. What has been seen is unseeable. Now you will look at every monastery as an industrial facility that has been taken over and repurposed. Technological regression has led us to believe that ancient people were obsessed with religion, when in fact they were obsessed with efficiency and harmony with the forces of nature. Ask yourself where the red mercury disappeared to after it was removed from the baths during the endless restorations of the 20th century. It disappeared into the closed laboratories of those who dictate our gasoline prices today. They used this knowledge to create weapons of annihilation with which they wiped out Tartaria and then banned the very mention of such technologies from the general public. The coordinates of deception indicate that every modern war for resources is just a consequence of our losing access to the free ether. Temples have become empty shells from which the core has been removed. They have acoustics, but their heart is gone. The organ pipes are silent or play only music, although they once vibrated at a frequency of 48 Hz, causing the walls to radiate soft infrared heat. It was an energy comfort system that is impossible to imagine in our world of constant economy. And it was then that the official explanations began to collapse, when the first Edison light bulbs were presented at world exhibitions. Why do many photographs of exhibitions from 1,890 show buildings shining with thousands of lights, but we do not see any power plants or poles with kilometers of wires? Because the buildings themselves generated this energy. They simply gave away the old technology for their invention, but gradually cut off the antennas on the roofs of ordinary houses to make us pay for every watt. It was a great robbery of humanity. Cathedrals are monuments to our energy slavery. You enter and involuntarily bow your head, not realizing that you are standing inside a looted and decommissioned reactor. Anomalies that are impossible to see surround you in every molding, each of which was previously part of a waveguide for transmitting high-frequency signals. Have you ever noticed that the inside of old cathedrals is always very cold in the winter now? Even though they are built of thick stone that should keep the heat in for months? That is because the system is off. Stone without vibration is just dead stone. But when the antenna on the roof was working and the red mercury was in place, the granite and marble structure heated up by molecular friction under the influence of constant resonance. This was a technology that did not require burning anything. No wood, no coal, no gas, no carbon dioxide, no smoke, just the pure energy of space. The official narrative fears this truth more than any other, because it makes the entire modern oil and gas industry a meaningless and harmful mess. They wiped out the engineers of the old world and left us with only priests to explain away the mechanisms we do not understand in terms of divine intervention and miracles. Look at the antenna crosses from the perspective of modern radio engineering. If you remove the religious context, you will see vibrators, directors, and reflectors. These are complex, multi-element structures designed for a certain wavelength. Why would God need a Yagi antenna on the roof of a temple in 1750? The answer is obvious to anyone who has ever held a physics textbook in their hands, and not just a collection of church texts. These structures were nodal points in the communication and power supply network. The atmospheric signature of annihilation destroyed the central nodes of this network, and what remained was declared sacred. This is the period of inheritance, when invaders come to the abandoned laboratories of a great civilization and begin to worship devices whose content and function they have long forgotten. The stones that cannot lie remember the touch of true masters, who knew that the sky is not just a place for clouds to live, but an infinite source of power. Ask yourself why cathedrals have giant metal candlesticks that look more like insulators on high-voltage substations. Why are there so many copper and brass details on the walls, going deep into the foundation, forming complex electrical circuits? It was a system for grounding and distributing static current. The global reset erased the knowledge of how to use it, but they deliberately left the outer shell to manipulate your subconscious through grandeur and fear. You consider these buildings grand, and it is true. But this grandeur is not theological, it is purely technological. These are monuments to a civilization that was thousands of years ahead of us in understanding the nature of the ether. And that is why they so carefully control any independent research into the dungeons beneath the great cathedrals. There, in the deep foundations, ancient generators and storage devices still stand, which they have not been able to dismantle, but have been able to securely preserve and hide behind brick walls. The truth lies right before your eyes, in every stained glass window. Stained glass windows are not just colored glass with biblical plots for the uneducated masses. They were complex light filters for focusing certain frequencies of the light spectrum inside the room. The color of the glass directly affects the energy state of the space and the mood of a person. It was an exact science of frequencies, vibrations, and color therapy. Cathedrals were global centers of healing and restoration of the human biofield with the help of light, sound, and etheric flows. Now there is only silence, the smell of incense, and an artificial fear of sin. Technological regression has turned a place of planetary power into a place of submission and collecting money. Once seen, it is impossible to unsee. Now you know that these golden spires were looking for an electric charge in the sky, not for the mercy of higher powers. Go out into the street of your city today. Raise your head and look at the nearest old cathedral as if you were seeing it for the first time. Do not look at it as a church. Look at it as hardware, as the iron of an ancient and much more advanced civilization. Look at the copper mesh on the roof, at the spire's antennas, at the giant dome's condensers. Ask yourself why the official narrative is so panicked at the very word ether. Why was Nikola Tesla erased from textbooks for decades, while his most revolutionary patents were immediately classified by the secret services? Because he was trying to give us back what they stole after 1812. He was trying to turn the cathedrals back on and give people freedom. But energy slavery has proven too profitable for the new masters of this world. It goes much deeper than you might think. We live on the ruins of a great power plant that we mistakenly call planet Earth. The cathedrals are just sockets that have been roughly torn out of the wall. But the wall is still energized. The atmosphere is still filled with free electricity waiting to be used. They can cut down the antennas, they can take the red mercury to Oxford or the Vatican, but they can never change the fundamental laws of physics. The truth lies right before your eyes, etched into every stone and every copper plate. Ask yourself why the plans of the cathedrals look so uncannily like modern microcircuits and motherboards when viewed from above by satellite. The coordinates of the deception indicate that we live inside a giant computer that they have hacked, turned off some of the modules, and reprogrammed to suit their own invading needs. It is time to finally wake up from the millennial sleep imposed on us by the victors. Look at the world around you with the sober gaze of a researcher, not a deceived and tired layman. Every old spire is a silent challenge to your logic. Every dome is irrefutable proof that we have been deceived on a global scale. Do not believe the sweet words about the primitive past and gradual progress. We are the descendants of giants who held the sky in their hands and transformed the energy of a thunderstorm into light and comfort in their homes. The global reset could not destroy absolutely everything. The stones continue to vibrate at the frequency of truth if you put your hand to it. We only need to learn to listen to it again and understand its language. Stop bowing your head before the religious screen that blocks the sun of truth from you. Raise it to the spires and see there the true coordinates of your freedom. We are only beginning to uncover the secret files of this great architectural deception. Every cathedral, every old church is a clue that leads to the solution of our true history. The following investigations will show you how the underground cities and railways of Tartaria were connected to these above-ground power units into a single living mechanism. You will never again be able to enter an old cathedral and not see an ancient reactor inside. This knowledge is your first and most important key to getting out of the energy trap in which we have all found ourselves. Be attentive to the smallest details. Look for traces of red mercury in old church books and restoration reports. Look at crosses as functional antennas. The truth is already here. It has not disappeared anywhere. It is in every stone, in every copper plate, in every spire that cuts the sky above your head. The time has come to open the archives. We are reclaiming our great past forever, without the right to be forgotten again. Think about why the old cathedral bells were made of such complex metal alloys that it is impossible to reproduce today without great expense. The bells were part of a system of fine-tuning of frequency. When the bell rang, it launched a wave that resonated with the dome and red mercury, creating a stable energy field around the city. It was a protective dome. The official narrative tells you that the bells are for calling people to service. But why were the bells removed and melted down during every major war? Because the conquerors knew, without the bell, the cathedral becomes a dead pile of stones, which can no longer protect its inhabitants on an energetic level. This was the disarmament of entire civilizations. Ask yourself again, why are they so panicky, afraid of your simple questions? Why are the restorations of central cathedrals always carried out under such tight security and closed by high fences with film? Because behind these forests and film, they cut off the remnants of our true technological heritage day and night. Each new bathhouse, erected in place of the old one, without a mercury core and correct orientation along the magnetic poles, is another nail in the coffin of our energy independence. But we see everything. We remember everything. We know that cathedrals are not places for sadness, but antennas of great power. And one day, we will make them shine at full power again. Not from the dim light of wax candles, but from that eternal power that fills the universe and is available to everyone. Wake up. Time has passed. No more numbers. Only facts. Only you. Only the truth. Open your eyes. Look straight into the sky. There are answers to all the questions you were afraid to ask. This was the archivist of the forbidden truth. We continue to excavate our stolen history, where each new paragraph of the script is a heavy blow to their wall of centuries-old lies. Don't stop there. Go downtown today and look at the temples in a completely different way. Now you know what to really look for. Look for antennas. Look for grounding. Look for hidden energy. Look for the truth that was insidiously hidden under the golden robes and incense. It is waiting for you. The coordinates of deception are finally erased from your consciousness. The path is clear. See you in our next investigation, where we will look even deeper into the dungeons that you were never told about in schools. Be vigilant, and don't let the system lull your curiosity again.